My mother stood up at my brother's engagement party, clinked her glass with a butter knife, until the whole patio went quiet, and told 47 people that she sometimes wondered if the hospital had sent her home with the wrong baby. She said it smiling. She said it the way you say something you've rehearsed in the mirror, until it sounds like a joke. A few people laughed. Wes's fiancé's parents looked at their plates. I was sitting at the far end of the table, the one nearest the caterer's station, and farthest from the fairy lights, and I did something I had never done in 33 years of being Janet Harmon's daughter. I set my fork down, folded my napkin, and decided that this would be the last lie she ever told about me in a room I was sitting in. But I need to go back. Because this story doesn't begin at an engagement party in Buckhead. It begins in a hospital in Savannah, Georgia, 19 years ago, when my father squeezed my hand so hard I could feel the bones in his fingers and said, "Elise, you're my steady one. You remember that? The Harmon family. That's what we were. Harmon & Sons General Contracting, a company my grandfather had started in 1968 with a pickup truck, a circular saw, and a handshake deal to frame houses in Chatham County. My father, Frank Harmon, took it over the year I was born. We weren't wealthy, but we had the kind of life that felt permanent. A 3-bedroom brick house on a shaded street off Abercorn. A boat we took out to Wausau Island twice a summer, pot roast on Sundays. My mother, Janet, had a way of making everyone in a room feel like she was doing them a favor by being in it. She was beautiful. Not the soft kind, the kind that holds its shape, the kind that looks the same in a grocery store as it does at a fundraiser. People assumed that beauty meant warmth. It didn't. It meant she knew how to perform warmth, selectively, strategically, and almost always in the direction of my brother. Wes was 3 years younger than me. From the moment he could smile at a stranger and get something for it, the gravity of our family shifted toward him. My father loved us both, I believe that. But my mother loved Wes in a way that left very little room for anyone else. She kept his report cards on the refrigerator. She framed his soccer trophies. My straight A's lived in a manila folder in the kitchen drawer, the one with the takeout menus and expired coupons. When I was 14, my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He was dead in 7 months. I remember the hospital room more clearly than I remember most things. The way the fluorescent lights buzzed at a frequency that felt like it was inside your skull. The way my mother stood at the window, looking out, not at him. The way Wes sat in the hallway playing a game on his phone because he was 11 and no one had told him how to be in a room where someone was dying. My father looked at me, and his eyes were the kind of clear that comes right before the end, when the body has stopped fighting and the mind gets one last window of perfect focus. "Elise, you're my steady one." I held his hand. I said I knew. He died on a Thursday. It rained. I know that's the kind of detail that sounds made up, like something a writer would add, but it rained so hard that the parking lot flooded, and we had to wait an extra 40 minutes before we could drive home. My mother sat in the driver's seat and didn't say a word the entire time. Wes fell asleep in the back. I sat in the passenger seat and watched the water rise around the tires and thought, this is what drowning looks like when you're not in the ocean. After the funeral, things moved fast. My father had a life insurance policy, $400,000. He had the contracting business, which my mother sold within 6 months to a competitor in Pooler, for what Aunt Lorraine later told me was well below market value. He had the house, which was paid off, and he had, though I wouldn't learn this for nearly 2 decades, a separate trust account he'd set up through his attorney, specifically for my education. $60,000. Earmarked for me. I'll come back to that. What I saw at 14 was this. My mother redecorated the living room. She bought a new car. She enrolled Wes in a private soccer academy that cost $8,000 a semester. She told me, when I asked about college savings, that things were tight and I'd need to be realistic about my options. Realistic. That was her word for me. Wes got potential. I got realistic. I graduated high school second in my class. I had a partial academic scholarship to the University of Georgia. Needed about $12,000 a year to cover the gap. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where my father used to spread out blueprints, and let me trace the lines with my finger, and I asked my mother if we could make it work. She stirred her coffee. She didn't look up. Elise, I don't know where you think that money is going to come from. Your father didn't leave us as comfortable as people think. 2 weeks later, Wes got a brand new Jeep Wrangler for his 15th birthday. Midnight blue. Lifted suspension. He couldn't even drive it legally for another 7 months. I enrolled at Savannah Technical College. I told myself it was a stepping stone. That word, stepping stone, became something I repeated so often it stopped meaning anything. Like when you say a word 50 times and it dissolves into sound. The day I turned 20, I moved to Atlanta with $200 in a checking account, a duffel bag, and a job answering phones at a catering company in Midtown called Pearl and Ivy. My apartment was a studio above a dry cleaner on Ponce de Leon that smelled like chemical lavender, and had a window AC unit that sounded like a helicopter taking off every time it kicked on. I could hear my neighbor's television through the wall. Every night, Jeopardy at 7:30. I started answering the questions out loud because I needed to hear a voice that wasn't the one in my head telling me I had made some mistake. I called home every Sunday. The calls followed a pattern. My mother would ask if I was eating enough, which was her way of asking if I could afford food without actually offering to help. Then she'd spend 20 minutes telling me about Wes. Wes made varsity. Wes got invited to a showcase. Wes's coach said he had Division I potential. Wes's Division I potential lasted exactly one semester at Kennesaw State before he blew out his ACL and pivoted to, in my mother's words, exploring his options. Exploring his options meant moving back home, sleeping until noon, and cycling through girlfriends who my mother treated like auditionees for a role only she could cast. Meanwhile, I was learning everything. I watched how Pearl and Ivy ran events. I took notes on vendor contracts, pricing structures, client communication. I studied the owner, a woman named Diane Okafor, the way a medical student studies an attending physician. Diane had built Pearl and Ivy from a 2-person operation into one of Atlanta's most respected catering and event planning firms. She was precise, creative, and completely intolerant of excuses. One night, after a corporate gala at the Fox Theater that had gone sideways because of a vendor no-show, I stayed until 2 a.m. reorganizing the backup plan I'd built on the fly. New florist, rerouted deliveries, reconfigured seating to hide the gap. Diane found me the next morning still at my desk, asleep on a spreadsheet. She sat down across from me. "How long have you been doing this?" "Doing what?" "Solving problems nobody asked you to solve." I didn't know how to answer that. "My whole life, probably." She pushed a folder across the desk. "I'm giving you the Whitfield Pace wedding. Full coordination. It's yours." I was 23. That wedding had a $90,000 budget. I executed it without a single issue. The bride's mother sent Diane a handwritten letter, saying it was the most beautiful event she had ever attended. Diane handed me the letter. "You're not an employee, Elise. You're a founder who hasn't started yet." So I started. At 26, I used $18,000 in savings, every dollar I had earned and not spent on rent or ramen or the one good blazer I wore to every client meeting, to register Cypress and Stone Events LLC. Single member. Just me, a laptop and a rented desk at a co-working space on Peachtree Street. I chose the name because cypress trees grow in swamps and stone holds up buildings. I liked the metaphor. I was both. I kept my name off everything public-facing. No personal LinkedIn, no press features. All contracts went through the company name and my attorney, a meticulous woman named Rebecca Hale, who asked me once why I was so insistent on privacy. "Because I know my family," I said, "and if they find out I'm building something, they'll either try to take credit for it or find a way to make it about them." Rebecca nodded like she understood. She probably did. Half her clients had the same story. By 29, Cypress and Stone was coordinating 50-plus events a year. Corporate retreats, weddings, product launches, a restaurant opening in Virginia Highland that Atlanta magazine called one of the best parties of the year. I had 6 employees, an office in a converted warehouse in West Midtown, with exposed brick and 16-foot ceilings, and a lease on a 2-bedroom condo in Inman Park, with a balcony that overlooked a row of dogwood trees. By 31, annual revenue crossed $2.8 million. I had 11 employees, contracts with 4 of the top wedding venues in the metro area, and a reputation in the industry that I had built entirely on the quality of my work and the invisibility of my name. Here's the part that still makes me close my eyes and shake my head. 18 months ago, Wes, who had by then cycled through selling insurance, managing a gym that went under, and briefly attempting to become a real estate agent, got engaged to a woman named Kelsey from Alpharetta. Kelsey's family had money, old Alpharetta money, the kind that builds additions onto churches and gets buildings named after them. Her parents wanted a proper engagement party. They wanted it planned by someone good. Wes asked around. Someone recommended Cypress and Stone. He didn't know it was me. Our website listed only the company name and Rebecca's contact information. Kelsey's mother, Donna, called our office and booked a consultation. I took the meeting myself. I always took the first meeting. We planned the engagement party from start to finish. Venue selection, catering, florals, lighting, everything. Donna told me she had never worked with a planner who understood her vision so intuitively. Wes told my mother at Easter that Kelsey's family had hired the best event company in Atlanta. My mother reportedly said, "That's Wes for you. Always finds the best." My Aunt Lorraine texted me that quote. She signed off with a single emoji, the upside-down smiley face. Lorraine is my father's sister. She has been quietly, persistently in my corner for 19 years, the kind of ally who doesn't announce herself but never leaves. It was Lorraine who called me 2 days before the engagement party. "Elise, honey, I need to tell you something. Your mother has been telling people you're in trouble. That you've been borrowing money. That the man you were seeing last year left because you couldn't hold things together." The man I was seeing last year was a perfectly decent architect named Paul, who I had broken up with, amicably, because we wanted different things. My mother had apparently turned that into a narrative of abandonment and instability. She was still writing my story. She just wasn't using facts. I thanked Lorraine. I told her I'd be fine. I went to that engagement party because Wes invited me, personally, and because I had coordinated every detail of it, down to the weight of the napkins. I knew that room better than anyone in it. I just didn't plan on anyone knowing that. The Whitfield Estate. Buckhead, Atlanta, October. The kind of evening where the air smells like smoke and magnolia, and the light turns everything golden for about 20 minutes before the sun drops. The patio was strung with market lights. The tables were set with olive branches and white ranunculus. The caterers were from a farm-to-table outfit in Decatur that I had personally vetted 6 months earlier. Everything was beautiful because I had made it beautiful. Nobody at that table knew that. That was the point. I wore a navy silk dress I'd bought myself. Simple, cut well. My father's watch on my wrist, the one Lorraine had saved for me after he died, because my mother had planned to sell it. I looked like exactly what I was. A woman who had built something real and didn't need anyone's permission to stand in it. My mother found me near the bar before dinner. She looked me over the way you appraise something at an estate sale, calculating what it might be worth and deciding, not much. You look thin, she said. Are you eating? I'm great, Mom. You know, Kelsey's parents are just wonderful, so accomplished. It's nice for Wes to be around that kind of energy. That kind of energy, as opposed to mine, presumably. Dinner was fine. The toast started. Kelsey's father went first. Warm, gracious, a little long. Then Kelsey's maid of honor. Then my mother stood up. She didn't wait to be invited. She took the microphone the way she took everything, as if the world had simply been holding it for her until she was ready. She talked about Wes, his resilience, his charm. The way he always landed on his feet. She made his string of failed jobs sound like a hero's journey. She made his ACCL tear sound like a war wound. She painted a portrait of a young man who had overcome adversity with grace and determination. And the only thing missing from the painting was any relationship to reality. Then she turned to me. My daughter Elise is here tonight. The patio went still. Elise has always been independent. She let the word hang there, the way you let a match hover over kindling. No degree, no real direction. She moved to Atlanta years ago and she's been, well, she smiled at the crowd. She's been figuring things out. We all have our own timeline, right? A few people laughed. The uncomfortable kind. The kind that sounds like furniture being dragged across a floor. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Something older than anger. Something that had been sitting in a locked room for 19 years, waiting for me to open the door. I counted to 5. Then I stood up. I walked to the small table near the patio railing, where the DJ had set a second microphone for the toasts. I picked it up, the feedbacks squealed for half a second, and then the night went perfectly quiet. I'd like to say something. My voice did not shake. I need you to know that. After 33 years of being the footnote, my voice did not shake. Congratulations, Wes. I love you. I mean that genuinely. I looked at my brother. He was holding Kelsey's hand. He looked like a man who had just heard a sound he couldn't identify. And to everyone here tonight, I want to be honest with you. Because my mother just told you I'm still figuring things out. So let me tell you what I figured out. I turned to face her. She was still standing. The glass was still in her hand. Mom, this party, the venue, the caterers, the flowers, the lighting, the napkins, every single detail of this evening. My company planned it. Cypress and Stone Events. I own it. I built it. It coordinates over 50 events a year across Metro Atlanta and just crossed $2.8 million in annual revenue. Kelsey's parents hired me. Wes has been telling you for 3 months that they found the best planner in the city. That's me. The patio was so quiet I could hear the ice settling in someone's glass. You told me when I was 16 that there was no money for college. There was money. You bought Wes a Jeep he couldn't legally drive. You spent $8,000 a semester on a soccer academy he quit after 1 year. You told me to be realistic while you invested every dollar Dad left into the child who looked like a better reflection of you. I kept my voice level. Not angry. Not trembling. Level, the way a foundation is level when it's been set right. I'm not saying this to ruin tonight. I'm saying it because I have spent 19 years listening to you tell people a story about me that isn't true, and I'm done. I set the microphone on the table. I picked up my clutch. I walked toward the gate. My heels on that flagstone path were the only sound on the patio, each step a small, clean punctuation mark at the end of a very long sentence. I made it to my car, a black Audi I had paid for in cash, and I sat in the driver's seat in the parking lot of the Whitfield estate for a long time. I didn't cry. I just breathed. The kind of breathing you do when something that has been pressing on your chest for 2 decades finally lifts and your lungs don't quite remember how much room they have. Let me step outside the story for a moment and talk to you directly. If you have ever been the family afterthought, the one they describe with a pause and a shrug, while they use exclamation points, for everyone else, this is for you. If you have ever built something extraordinary while the people who were supposed to love you most were busies, telling the world, you were failing, I see you. I know what it costs. I know how heavy it is to carry proof of your own worth in a family that refuses to read it. Drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever had to say the truth out loud in a room that had been surviving on a comfortable lie? I read every single one now. Back to the story, because what happened after that party, what I discovered about my father, and what my mother had done with the thing he left me, that's the part that cracked the whole thing open. 3 days after the engagement party, Lorraine called. She's telling people you had a meltdown, that the stress of your little party business pushed you over the edge, and you made a scene. I wasn't surprised. My mother's operating system had exactly one response to truth: reclassify it as instability. But then Lorraine said something that made me pull the car over. Elise, there's something I should have told you a long time ago. I didn't because I couldn't prove it. But after what happened Saturday, I think you need to know. My father, before he died, had set up an educational trust for me. $60,000, funded from his share of the contracting business. Held in a separate account managed by his estate attorney, a man named Gerald Pace in Savannah. The trust was specifically designated for my education or professional development. It was to be released to me when I turned 18. My mother was the executor of my father's estate. When I turned 18, Gerald Pace's office sent a letter notifying me that the funds were available. My mother signed for the letter. She contacted Gerald's office, told them I had decided to defer the funds, and requested they be rolled into the general estate account, which she controlled. Gerald, who was 72 and semi-retired, processed the request without verifying it with me. My mother took my father's last gift to me and spent it on what, I don't know. Wes's soccer, the kitchen renovation, the trip to Hilton Head she took the summer I was living above a dry cleaner eating cereal for dinner. It doesn't matter what she spent it on. What matters is that she spent it. I called Rebecca Hale that afternoon. It took her 4 weeks. Gerald Pace had retired, but his firm still had the records. Everything was documented. The original trust instrument, my mother's written request, the disbursement. Rebecca's firm sent one letter. Within 10 days, we recovered $52,400, the original amount plus partial interest that had accrued before the transfer. I did not take my mother to court. I thought about it. Rebecca told me I had a case, but I didn't want a case. I didn't want to be tethered to that woman by a legal proceeding that would drag on for months, giving her exactly what she wanted. A reason to keep telling people I was the difficult one. Instead, I donated the full $52,400 to Georgia State University's first-generation student emergency fund in my father's name. Frank Harmon, the man who squeezed my hand and called me his steady one. The fund will help students who are one unexpected bill away from dropping out. Students like the girl I was at 20, choosing between groceries and textbooks, and pretending she wasn't choosing at all. 5 weeks after the engagement party, Wes called me. He'd found out about Cypress and Stone. Kelsey's mother had put it together after the party, had called our office and asked directly, and Kelsey had told Wes. He was quiet on the phone for a long time. The kind of quiet that has texture to it, that you can almost lean against. Elise, I didn't know. I know you didn't. She told me you were struggling. Every time I asked about you, she said you were barely getting by. She said you were too proud to ask for help. I know, Wes. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? He was quiet again. Then he said, I don't know, and that's the worst part. We talked for almost 3 hours. He told me about things my mother had said about me, that I had never heard. That I was jealous of him. That I had left Savannah because I couldn't handle not being the center of attention. That I had a spending problem. That I had been fired from my job in Atlanta, which was a company I owned. Every story she told was a mirror image of the truth, close enough to be plausible, reversed enough to be devastating. Wes cried. I didn't, but I wanted to. Not out of sadness, out of something like relief. The relief of finally being believed by someone who had been standing in the same fog and hadn't known it. We're still figuring out what our relationship looks like now. It's careful. We're two people learning to talk to each other without a translator who is deliberately mistranslating everything. Some days it works. Some days one of us says something that echoes with 20 years of misunderstanding, and we have to stop and untangle it. But it's honest. For the first time in our lives, it's honest. And honest is worth more than easy. My mother has not contacted me. Through Wes, I've heard she is telling people that I staged the whole thing at the engagement party. That I planned it to humiliate her in front of Kelsey's family. That it was calculated and cruel. Maybe it was. I've sat with that. I've turned it over with my therapist, Dr. Nina Castillo, who has a way of asking questions that feel like someone gently removing a bandage you forgot was there. Do you think it was cruel? She asked me. I think it was necessary. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She's right. Maybe telling the truth at someone's engagement party is cruel. But here's what I know. I spent 19 years trying to correct my mother's story through silence and achievement. I kept my head down. I built something extraordinary. I waited for her to notice, to update the narrative, to see me. She never did. she never would have. Some people don't want to see you because seeing you would require them to see themselves. And that's a mirror they broke a long time ago. Sometimes the truth has to be loud, not because you want it to be, but because quiet truths get buried, and I was tired of being buried. Today, Cypress and Stone Events has 14 employees. We just signed a contract to manage a year-long event calendar for a boutique hotel group expanding into the Southeast, the biggest project we've ever taken on. Last month, I hired a director of operations, a woman named Tasha who reminds me of Diane Okafor in the way she solves problems before you've finished describing them. Diane, by the way, sent me flowers when she heard about the hotel contract. The card said, "Told you, founder." I keep it on my desk next to a photo of my father. He's standing in front of a house frame, one of his builds, with sawdust in his hair and his hands on his hips, smiling at whoever's behind the camera like they're the only person in the world. I think it was my mother who took the photo. I try not to let that ruin it. I visit his grave when I can. It's a small cemetery outside Savannah, shaded by live oaks draped with Spanish moss. I bring coffee because he loved it, black, no sugar, in the same thermos he used to take to job sites. I sit on the bench and I talk to him. "I did it, Dad. I kept going. I'm your steady one. I always was." Dr. Castillo told me once that grieving a living parent is its own kind of solitude. "It's a loss nobody sends you a card for," she said, "because the person is still here. They're just not here for you." She's right, my mother is alive. She lives in the same house on Abercorn. She still gets her hair done every Thursday. She still goes to the same church. She still tells people about her wonderful son. She just doesn't mention me anymore, which is, if I'm being honest, the most accurate thing she's ever communicated about our relationship. I am absent from her story, and for the first time, I'm okay with that, because I have my own story now, and it's better than anything she could have written for me. I'm not angry. I want to be clear about that. Anger is a tenancy agreement with someone who's already trashed the apartment. I terminated the lease. What I have instead is clarity. Clarity about what I built and what it cost. Clarity about who deserves a seat at my table and who I love best from a distance. Clarity about the difference between forgiveness and access, because you can forgive someone completely and still change the locks. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are not punishment. They are the honest recognition that your peace is not a negotiable commodity, that you are allowed to protect the life you built, even from the people who were supposed to help you build it. If you're watching this from a family that made you the background character in your own life, hear me. You are not the role they cast you in. You never were. You are the whole production. The script, the stage, the lights, the standing ovation. They just never bought a ticket. Thank you for being here. If this meant something to you, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me where you're watching from. Or just tell me one thing. What did they say you'd never be, and what did you become instead? I read every single one. And remember this. You are not what they said you were. You are not what they whispered at dinner tables or laughed about at parties or explained away to strangers. You are what you built when no one was watching, and that is so much more than they will ever understand. Until next time, this is Elise, and I am, finally, my own story.